There we go.
Hello.
Damn you, Google. Right.
Always one step ahead.
I
Morning.
we we've talked about Star Wars so often in the past that I feel like we've already done it.
All right. Bye, everyone.
No. But we're sticking. Star Wars Rebels is new, and what before we get to our earliest memories, we're first going to say what we thought of it and why. And I'm going to take a quick break, and Dave is going to say why he didn't like it and why.
I didn't know. This is we speak to you on the sort of day after, or the 2 days after, the first episode of Star Wars Rebels aired, and I might as well hold my hands up and say that part of why I wasn't keen on it is a terrible reason, and that is the hype. What we have here is a series that comes on the heels of what ended up being a good, I'm told, TV series in the Clone Wars series. I have yet to push through the early boring episodes, but I'm told that it's worth doing because they get really good, season 2 and on. Rebels was therefore there was a lot of promise to Rebels because it was like those people, having graduated, having got all the way through a great series, have now moved on. It's some of the same creative people, as I understand. They're now in this new era, well, the old era, the era we care about. So it's that talent, but doing Star Wars that's like real Star Wars, and without George Lucas anymore to kind of, pull them back from anything they might want to do, because they're not using the characters from the actual films, as far as we know. So they've got creative free reign and all of this wonderful promise. I mean, even just the phrase Clone Wars, but in the old original trilogy universe, or era, or timeline, whatever you prefer to call it, should mean that it's going to be good. So maybe it was just the hype. Maybe I was affected by that. But what I actually watched last night was just a bog standard, boring cartoon. It was, and I say that without disparagement. You know that I'm a fan of cartoons, and it happened. And then this is the other thing. This exists in the time when Korra is going strong, even if it isn't, broadcasting strong. You've got, the Ninja Turtles series. You've got really interesting looking cartoons like sort of Gravity Falls and Wander Over Yonder are happening. There's all this. Cartoons are this wonderful place right now, and this was like it was from 10 years ago. It was nothing interesting happened in it. No, there wasn't any interesting design in it. I'm gonna sort of harp on the design a bit because I think that's where I think where I started off not liking it, because I'm prepared to give them a lot of room there, because apparently Star Wars Galaxies, sorry, not Galaxies, sorry, apparently Star Wars Clone Wars, they end up really settling into the design that they came up with and really making it look good. And and this series has the potential to do that as well. The problem is what they're starting with. At least Clone Wars looked snazzy. This looks, well. Look, I can't really think of it any other way. If you get a team of designers of any kind, cartoonists of any sort, into a room and say you're working on Star Wars, you will get fascinating character designs. In order to get to the character designs they had in the series, you have to focus group them to be deliberately less interesting. Because think of all the wild and wonderful things that people would have come up with. Design a new Jedi. Design the new Jedi that's going to be the main character in a new Star Wars series. Think of what all those designers must have come up with. They must have picked all sorts of different races. If someone said, no, it's got to be a human, okay, they would have picked all sorts of interesting humans and body types and costumes. And what they ended up with is possibly the most generic man. Just white man. He just has a little beard. He has hair. He's just a man. He's just a very generic-looking chap. And then there's a woman who's just a woman-looking woman. And then you've got the. I want to say Twi'lek. What's the name of the race that the green woman is with the
Yeah,
headhorns?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah.
she is kind of an interesting design, but here's my problem with the series in general. She focused in her. The thing that's interesting about her comes from Star Wars, not from this series. As a character, as an individual member of the species she is, there's nothing interesting to look at about her at all. Which leaves us really with the only crew member that's interesting to look at, which is the big monster-looking guy. And I'm told he's one of the early character design for a Wookiee, so he's from Star Wars as well. And so you have the kid who couldn't be more generic. There's a nod towards him looking interesting by they've made his nose quite big, and that's it. And then you've got this just a bloke, and then you've got this just a woman. And I didn't like the design, except the stuff that comes from Star Wars, the ships and the robots and things. That was all lovely. But that I've seen that in a better thing. And then there's the animation, which I didn't like. They went with the sort of, again, it could have been made 10 years ago. The lighting effects are the only thing that's new that I can tell. The animation is, it's just not good enough. In 2014, when we have great animation, really well animated TV CG, it wasn't good enough for me because you had, I can't think what to compare it to, but you saw it in older series when CG was still kind of getting to be something that people could do on TV. You've got that kind of animation where characters will constantly nod their heads and slur all around the place in sort of weird smooth movements. You watch any of the close-ups where they're talking, and their mouths and their faces are just sort of slushing around in this weird smooth action. Didn't like it. None of the when you zoom out and it's just people, body movements. That was fine, but not dynamic, not interesting, just fine, just functional. And then the script wasn't a script, it was just cliches strung together. Who is this kid? I'm in space. There wasn't anything there. So we were kind of watching this and trying to hook into it, trying to like it, and there wasn't anything to hook us, to really grab us. And so I feel like I'm missing something, because of course I go straight onto Twitter and sort of search Star Wars Rebels, and of course it's Star Wars Rebels was great, Star Wars Rebels is really promising. There was a thing that was like the top 5 quotes that mean Star Wars Rebels is really good. And so perhaps I just don't see it. But I don't know. It seems to me as if, given the breadth of choice that people have now, it doesn't live up to almost any other cartoon that's on. And imagine a Star Wars done by the Korra people. Wouldn't that be the best thing you ever saw? But no. So I didn't like it, sorry.
Well, I'm massively sitting on the fence. And before I illustrate why I'm fence sitting, I guess I'll just give my interpretation of what I saw today, because we only watched it a few hours ago, so it's incredibly fresh. What I felt that I saw, if we remove the script, which is terrible in an analysis, let's ignore the script. There was no talking, no. But if we don't so much focus on the script and the storytelling, and just look at the design, the character design, the function of the relationships of the characters, what I saw was lifting different tropes from all of the various Star Wars incarnations, the movies, the Clone Wars, the specifically the Knights of the Old Republic game. There was a lot of influence from that, specifically the ships and the makeup of the crew. I suppose quickly mentioning the dialogue, that I think the first whole 20 minutes was literally just lines lifted from the movies and the Clone Wars. They were literally exact lines. There wasn't even any filler dialogue. It was like, you could sit there and go, well, that's from A New Hope, and then his responses from, the climax of the Clone Wars, and it was this.
And I love that. I love that hologram of Obi-Wan saying, "Maybe if we wait long enough, there will be a return of the Jedi. The Empire will strike back.
It's just like,
yeah,
how
come on.
did we get in? It's brilliant. And I feel that the whole thing was, it was playing two sides. It was saying to the generation who are really too old to be watching Disney Channel, going, it's okay. It's still Star Wars. You don't have to look around nervously in case your mother-in-law comes through the door and sees you watching cartoons. It's okay, right? So that I got a lot out of that, and again, it was a lot of the hardcore Star Wars. I mean, I played Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 numerous times. I'd signed up to Star Wars Old Republic, and I think there was far too much of that fan service for the older, more serious canon enthusiasts, who want that back history and that okay, Luke and Leia, that's great, but there's so much more, and I think they tried to present it in that manner. Going straight to the design, what I really liked about Clone Wars was how they'd taken I can't remember what it's called, but it's a specific style of marionette animation from Taiwan, where they're like kung fu marionettes and all this kind of thing. And the Clone Wars, you forget it after a while, because we sat through all of them and absolutely adored it, and you do forget it after a while. And we started watching the forgotten episodes, the last couple that they released on Blu-ray. That they're all meant to look like handmade, hand-painted wooden figures. The hair is, a one piece with just like the extra lines drawn on, and just the same way you'd paint a wargaming miniature or a hand-drawn marionette. And that was beautiful, and it was an amazing, engaging style.
Begs the question: why didn't they just use marionettes?
I know why, and it goes back. I've totally got this figured out, and it goes back to a comment that Dave said earlier, where they would have focus grouped it, and they would have made it so unbelievably safe. And all I can think of as I watched those stormtroopers running around was plush toys. They all looked like plush toys. The helmets were overlapped.
Do you mean in Rebels?
In Rebels, Rebels looked like a line of plush.
I'll tell you exactly what they looked like. They looked like if you took the designs from Star Wars, so the stormtroopers, particularly the monster guy, the early design Wookiee guy,
yeah,
and then put them into the Disney Infinity style. That's what it looked like.
Ah, yeah, definitely. Yep.
Those little figures. Except even there, it seems designed to fit neatly into that style, which is Disney's biggest thing right now. But even there, the Disney Infinity figures are way more interesting to look at.
It's like they took all of the idiosyncrasies out and just left you with this watercolor, bland outline. I can't say too much about the plot that I saw, but I do have a lot of opinions about the plot that I would have liked to have seen to introduce the characters. And drawing on, I mean, this could be completely skewed by my time spent playing the games, the Old Republic games, because I saw much more of that universe and that style than I did of either the 70s and 80s movies or the modern takes. That a gradual introduction of a character a week, perhaps, more of a building a team, finding the people, it would have allowed you to have given some backstory to the characters without boring exposition, but it also would have given them an arc, because already there's no arc. We're introduced to 1, 2, 3, 5 fully developed characters, one of them being a droid, and a fairly fully developed street urchin who doesn't really seem to have any issues with who he is or his place or his opinions. He's fully realized. So where's the arc? I mean, yeah, okay, he's going to be a Jedi and they're running and there's rebels and there's sabotage, but these characters have already gone to all the deep, dark places that a really, really good story should take you. And it's like we're meeting them at the end, at their victorious moment where after the credits roll and then they get on with things because you know, all their conflicts are resolved, bar the big evil empire, which we already know how that's going to get resolved, and therefore it's not really their issue. And I think storyline-wise, that concerns me the most. And definitely the introduction of the characters I thought was heinously bland. I think
Right.
I think I'm out of gripes. Yeah. Oh, the
Yeah.
music. I forgot the music, and that normally means the music is pretty crap.
Oh,
Well, the
really? I
music,
thought
the music was Star Wars music, you know.
Well, it was, but I'm hugely critical of music. I
Well, no,
feel
me
that-
too. No, I'm with you. Again, exactly the same as before. The bits of the music that were good are from Star Wars.
Yeah,
the rest of it was
that's right.
fine. But maybe this is me being. Maybe this is too critical. Maybe I'm. Yeah, I think this is probably too critical. I'll say it anyway, though. My gut reaction when the kid picked up a lightsaber for the first time and it played Luke's theme was like, no, you've got to be directly related. You've got to be a Skywalker to have that theme.
It is called Skywalker's theme.
Is
You know,
it?
I remember my grandfather had the LP, so it's totally legit. It was an old
Yeah.
school medium that it was presented on. None of this digital reissuing, and it
No,
was
I can't remember. I
Skywalker's
can't
theme.
remember. I can't remember if they use it in the prequel trilogy or in Clone Wars. But if
good
they use it
question.
for Anakin, I'm fine if they use it for Anakin because then there's a family line. But this kid had better turn out to be related to them in some way to get that theme tune.
Yeah,
okay.
there was no distinct music.
No, nothing that stood out that wasn't already Star Wars. Right, my turn. I am presenting to everyone. Yes, I am. As for just getting back to the Clone Wars, and this looks like it's very much trying not to alienate Clone Wars fans, like people who came into Star Wars because of the Clone Wars. It's trying to keep it like that, but keep it new. And I think where the Clone Wars look like marionettes, and very intentionally look like marionettes, because it was George Lucas's idea of he wanted to acknowledge shows like the Thunderbirds. And I actually saw an interview with him where it was very intentional, because those were parts of the shows that he grew up on and that inspired him with Star Wars.
Cool.
I think, as you've said, like the Disney Infinity figures, to me, the Stormtroopers especially look like action figures. So when the kiddies go to the store and see them, they will see exactly what they have seen on the screen.
Yeah.
Now, you said he was Ezra, whatever his name is a non-distinct character. But I have to disagree, because, or not entirely, he's basically Aladdin from Disney's Aladdin. In fact, they reference it directly by calling him a street rat.
Yeah. But without the conflict, without the personal problems or the issues to resolve.
Well, that we know of. It's only been like one episode
Yes.
so far. So
Fair enough.
his eyes are insanely blue,
Yeah.
which means he's been inducing way too much spice, obviously.
I was going to say exactly that, yeah.
Yeah. What else could it be?
Okay,
George
so
Lucas-
I take it back. He's very interesting. Yeah,
I mean,
fair enough.
George Lucas has acknowledged that Tatooine was based on, inspired by June, that one.
Really?
Yes. He has openly acknowledged that over the years.
Cool.
So there's either that or the super high midi-chlorian count that he very likely has.
Well,
is somehow responsible.
maybe this series is going to resolve that. Maybe midichlorian turns out to just be another word for how much spice you've taken, and then
Well,
and then all can be forgiven. You know, we can get on board with that.
yeah. I have read, because I've been following this. Have either of you followed the mini episodes
Oh no, I didn't know about them.
led up to this
I
series?
think I saw a couple. I don't remember them, but I think I saw a couple.
One was simply just the first 10 minutes of this episode, which I'm wondering, will the rest turn out to just they've plucked bits from various episodes, or were they actually meant to be prequels? Because there's one where a TIE fighter crashes in the wheat fields or whatever they are near Ezra's tower, and he nicks off with the guy's helmet. So I'm assuming that's a prequel, because that sets up that he collects these things. Anyway, as for second season has been greenlit, and it
Yes.
was greenlit before the episode even went to air.
Yes.
But quickly, just to intersect, have you seen the
Mhm.
enormous video campaign that preceded this series? It was ridiculous. The sheer amount of interviews and behind-the-scenes footage and snippets and character profiles. And I mean, gosh, I knew all of their mother's second cousins' last names before this show even went to air.
But that's a very Star Warsian thing, don't you think? They want you to know as much so it feels like a fuller experience when you first watch the show. Like you're meant to go in with the spoilers and knowing everything. You see, that's when I went and saw episode 3. I knew Grievous because I'd picked up a Star Wars visual encyclopedia and I'd read the blurb. I just happened to fall on Grievous. And I'd read the blurb that he was once very human and he was such a big fan of droids that he augmented himself with droid ability. That to my sister, who knew only of episodes 4, 5, 6, 1, and 2, when she saw Grievous, she's like, "Why does a droid have a cough?" So that's poor. I think that's a poor effort on their part, because why go to all that effort to put that extra stuff in when you should be able to, and especially in a TV series, you can just work it in as the series goes on. As for the animation saying that it doesn't look that great, I personally thought they sort of captured the Star Wars feel very well, like on the Imperial Destroyer and such. It's suffering from what I've seen referred to as Season 1 syndrome, which all computer animated shows suffer from, because they don't know how well it's going to do. So if it does extremely well, then in seasons 2, 3, and 4, they can pour more money into the pool for that show. Because you'll notice the Clone Wars, the graphics get better as each season goes on, and the last season, they still look like wooden hand-painted puppets, but the actual atmosphere was extremely well done.
That's very true, and it does make sense that they would want to be cautious at the beginning. My concern is that I think there's a difference between being cautious and being bland. I feel as if the cautious thing to do would be to make it really exciting. And I think with this particular series, given the fact that, the reason they've greenlit another series is that they're the people making Star Wars. It almost doesn't matter. They're sort of going, yeah, we want there to be a TV series of Star Wars to coincide with the new films. Of course, green light. So it is safe by being Star Wars and by tying in with, or in it franchisely tying in with the films that are going to come out. So I think they could have gone a bit nuts with it, really. I guess what they might be doing is making sure that nothing they do impacts the new films in any negative way, does anything to the franchise that makes people think, oh, that franchise is now about X or Y, so that they're making it about nothing. But I don't know. I feel as if that concern shouldn't still be on the table, because all they have to link up with is the original trilogy, and they'll be fine. But anyway, as I say, I think I'm being slightly overly critical with this.
Getting back to Maddie's point, is there was no story arc. There's only been one episode. You cannot ascertain from one episode what the story arc.
It was
but
you can
have a story arc in one episode, and this was 2 episodes.
Mm.
And not just story arc. I was referring to character arcs more than story arcs, because story arcs can come and go. You can have a brilliant story arc, or you can just have an episode that's exposition for a larger story arc to come. It was more the character development that was my concern, that we were giving fully realized characters far too early.
I see. You see, the mistake I made in interpreting I was thinking seasonal story arc, so episodes 1 through to 20 or whatever, but that will, when you look back, you'll see, that's what the common thread was. That's what I thought you were referring to, which I think is very much obviously going to be Ezra's Jedi training.
Well, yeah, the trouble with I think the trouble with the character arc or the story arc, whichever way you want to look at it, of this first episode, and let's call it one episode, is that as far as I can remember, and I would have to examine it again to really be clear on this, but it seemed to me as if the story of this kid was that he ended up with these people, and then he was with those people for the duration of the episode, and then at the end he went, well, I might as well stay. And in that time, they put in a couple of nods to storyline. They put in him kind of going home, and then the Jedi was there, and he went, do you want to not go home? And he went, yeah. But you know what I mean? There was no conflict. There was no driving reason why he shouldn't go with them on the ship. So it wasn't a choice. It wasn't a big choice for him to make, which would have been a story moment, And they made it look as if it was that kind of story by him initially kind of, as I say, going back home, and then the Jedi turning up to convince him to come with them or whatever happened there. But they were saying throughout that he didn't have a family to go back to. He didn't have any ties anywhere else. So when he came on board the ship and said, I might as well stay on the ship, he was right. He might as well stay on the ship. And all it would have taken to make it more interesting was for there to be some driving reason why it would be a big decision.
I think it would have been really interesting on the part of the story development team to, at the end of this pilot double episode, for him to turn around and go, no, I don't. Bye. That was crazy. You tried to kill me. You got me arrested. I've got my nice little pad here. There's a wheat farm, and I've got my helmets. And just to go, no. Maybe we should be writing Series 3.
And then from there they could go any direction they wanted to get. Obviously, he has to end up on the ship somehow, but then they would be able to come up with an interesting reason for him to get on the ship. And I think the reason that they went with, or rather the way they presented it, speaks to another criticism that I have of the way the whole program was presented, which is that, okay, I don't really have a word for this, and I should have a word for it because it should be a famous term among people who watch cartoons, and maybe it is, and I just don't know it. But there's a certain way of presenting character reactions which I think is very lazy and which I think is kind of embarrassing, and it makes me wince when it happens, and this show was full of it. And one example is when a character... imagine a character who is feeling the warmth of friendship, and the camera pans slowly towards his face as a smile spreads on his face. Think of a character who, and they did that. That was kind of, towards the end as he's joining the crew. Think of the bit where, and oh my God, we should be beyond this now. Someone takes their helmet off and is an attractive woman, and at that point, the male character, camera zooms in as he pushes a weird smile forwards out of his face. And these are animation shorthand tricks that we've outgrown. Now we have better ways of showing things, and we probably did all along. And it just was uncomfortable to see them in this show, which is going to be a flagship show for at least for a bit for Star Wars, and which is a huge thing by Disney. Think of the TV series Disney has made that were great. And they should know all the tricks, and yet here we are again with this "Hey, what's your name?" scene, and nah. And so anyway, that was how they kind of justified the idea that he was going to go on the ship. They did it with one of those warmth of friendship faces, and that's not enough.
I think the problem there is in animation. In 2D animation, there's exaggeration, so you can really get the facial expression across.
That is exactly what I'm talking about, though, because you're absolutely right, and the reason why CG animators have fallen back on these things is for that reason. But that was 10 years ago. Look at Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Look at the Clone Wars. We're now in this world where CG does now have squash and stretch, and it does have exaggeration. Even the blandest, well, not blandest, but the Disney things that are using their most basically this is a Disney film style, like Frozen. They have exaggeration now. They look like cartoons now. And yeah, this is TV animation, but with probably the, at least potentially, they have access to the biggest budget that TV animation is going to ever have had, because they're using it to push a flagship series that Disney are now trying to make their mark on and present to the world that, hey, we're going to do this right. So there's no reason why they shouldn't have been able to put as much into it as they had. And I think it just bugs me that it looked so... You're right. That's why that kind of animation came about in CG. And it was in stuff like Shrek, when CG was still playing with what it had. But now we're past that. Or we should be. We are in other series.
Yeah, but what were you going to say before, Matty?
I was raising a slightly a side point, but discussing that particular interaction. That one thing I felt really uncomfortable, which I guess it's a very similar point to what Dave's making, but it's in regards to storytelling and characters in this setting, and it's something we really should have moved past, which is, oh, you're a pretty young girl? Oh, I'm a pretty young guy. Oh, we should be friends. When the hell does that ever happen in real life? I mean, you've got to really sell a character, my favourite device is common and shared interests. When you're setting up a character, you've got to give the audience something other than the colour of a suit or a type of weapon. I mean, these things are so 1977. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons really took the cake on, I'm a level 2 dwarf with a double-sided axe, and yeah, that's great, but what do you like for breakfast? I mean, that's a character. Do you prefer ketchup, or do you prefer barbecue sauce? Tomato sauce instead of ketchup here. And this whole idea of, as Izzy said, this flagship series for a world that was created purely on brilliant storytelling, really, because let's face it, episode 1 for New Hope, 1977, whatever you want to call it, was brilliant storytelling. And yet here we are going, oh, you're pretty, let's be friends. I mean...
And the thing is, Star Wars, the original Star Wars, didn't do that. No. And it was one of the refreshing things about it. Its heroine, in the 70s, was like just one of the heroes, and it kind of wasn't brought up until the next one. I guess it was alluded to, and of course it was Luke then, because they hadn't figured out that it was their sister, but they didn't make it a thing. It was just like their meeting was like, I'm going to rescue you. Come on. That was it. And now we're back to, look at your pretty face. Come on. Come on.
Just really quickly, I really didn't like the pink Mandalorian, because it was obviously meant to be, oh, who is this person? Oh, what a mystery. And I'm like, it's a chick. It's a young chick who looks like she's posing for the next cover of Playboy every time she stands still. You cannot fool me into thinking that she's going to play any other archetype in this story. It was just like, come on, bit of respect.
In fact, okay, actually, yeah, and let me add to that again. Everything you just said, completely agree. Plus, on top of that, you've been on Twitter, you've been on the internet for the last couple of years, you know what the discussions are that we've been having. If you make a girl Boba Fett, don't just make her pink. That's not what to do. Don't just go like, oh, Boba Fett, but because it's a girl. Come on.
I think you have to imagine their target audience is not people who have been following Star Wars.
No, but then...
Yeah.
Well, I go back to my earlier comments, are they? Because I seriously, and I'm going to rewatch it at some point in the week and take notes, because I saw far more parallels to the Old Republic trilogy of video games than to any other of the Star Wars canon. The ship, the crew, the setting, the challenges they faced, it was much, much more in line with those, and not just my interpretation, but visually and the devices that were put into place and everything about it just screamed Knights of the Old Republic for kids. and that makes me wonder: are they like? Are the kids? Is the only part that's aimed at the under 12 or under 16 to whatever kids of Disney, the plush toy, soft, rounded 3D animation with the lame, pardon me, facial acting, and then everything else is for the older guys who really shouldn't be watching cartoons and probably should be out paying a mortgage and that kind of thing. So I'm going to do some
Maybe.
digging around the internet later and see if anyone
Even
else
if
shares my parallels.
But even if it's not, even if it's 100% purely ignoring the old fans and going for the kids, which is of every reason to do, because, God, the Clone Wars was so popular with kids, that, like, even if that is who it's for, that's why to not reinforce. It's meant to be a completely different galaxy to ours. We don't have to be like, oh, it's a girl, therefore it's pink. Right, kids? You've learned that now. Okay, thanks. I'm learning because I'm a child. You know? That's why not to do that. That's why Star Wars was good. Star Wars... No, I mean, there were various things about Star Wars that like, now they just seem normal, but at the time they, like, broke what anyone expected anything to be. And one of those was... probably was Leia. But another one was things like R2-D2. You know, people thought robot was a certain thing, and here was just a functional device, but that was imbued. And that was, I know other stuff had kind of done that. Silent Running did that a little bit, and and things like that. But you know, Star Wars, of course, was the big breakout hit. So Star Wars is the place to surprise and to shatter expectations, and this didn't shatter any expectations anywhere through. I could have written down, before I saw it, everything that was going to happen in it. If someone had said it's the most generic thing ever, write down what that would be. I'm sure I would have come up with something quite similar to this. There was one moment... Sorry.
Go. No, finish your thought, then I'll go.
There was one moment that did surprise me, that I did get wrong, which was that I was pleasantly surprised when... the guy who turns out to be a Jedi, which is fair enough, I'll give them that because it's Star Wars. I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't, I'm a Jedi! And instead they came up with a slightly more interesting way of doing that, where the guy goes, aim at the Jedi! There are many ways they could have done it more interestingly still, but I was happy that they didn't go with the most boring way of doing it. But it's the only moment I could think of where they didn't. Alright, carry on.
Right, what I was going to say there, I now want, and after the season is over we'll compare, I want your notes on what this season as a chunk is going to be, as the most generic children's car show Disney. So it's Disney, so you've got those Disney cliches that will inevitably in it, that are already in it. So you want the Disney cliches, the Star Wars cliches, and your own personal input of what you think is generic. Because it does... Here's what Disney do well. They do cliches, but they do them well. Like Frozen, Tangled, all cliches, and the video game one, Wreck-It Ralph.
Yep.
All cliches, but all very well done.
Yeah,
you know
Tangled is
what
the
else?
best example of that. Sorry, Matthew, go on.
Yeah.
But, well, another thing, bringing in the Disney angle, that Disney are, from my perception, far more renowned than anything else for, is its villains. Disney villains. I mean, you can do university courses in Disney villains. And I think what I'm terrified of is the two villains that we've presented are going to fall into a genius strategist who bumbles everything by, you know, some calamity of happenstance, and then the evil overlord who's constantly Team Rocket style tangling with the Jedi but getting slung back off into space because of, you know, some foolish error on the part of his underlings or whatnot. And just the way they presented the commander guy with the Knights Templar helmet, there was nothing about him that made me go, ooh, that's going to be awesome when they show down. It was like, okay, we see his face, but he may as well just have a normal helmet on, because he did nothing that made me go, he's a brilliant villain. He's somebody that they should be concerned about. I mean, the guy had the kid captive. They abandoned the kid on the ship, and he gave him a funny look and walked out of the room, and that was as imposing and threatening as he got. Oh, you're going to be bait. Here's a cookie, son.
And then they had this big reveal, which was done with such a slow camera sweep that I was obviously supposed to be impressed, of this super bad guy, big bad villain, and it was a bloke. Don't get it was just a bloke. He wasn't even as interesting looking as Darth Maul. He was just a guy with a couple of stripes on his head and angry eyes. Come on.
Here's the
Star
thing that
Wars!
now that you've said that and mentioned it in that way, I know what they've done wrong. In that instance, they didn't set him up over voice comms over a number of episodes. Let's say in episode 6, then go for the big reveal, and show them, don't tell them. Show him all these big evil things that he's capable of, and then boom, there he is. But then you still may have been disappointed because he's still just a bloke.
And with him, and with the do you know what? I can't even remember the other guy. I literally can't remember him. I remember there was like an actual full-on 100% just a bloke, like a human man who was bad. Oh, by the way, that was the other thing. There was about 3 or 4 characters in this on both sides, 3 or 4 on each side, who were just human, just a human, and they were like main characters. Like the main bad guys are all comprised of like there's that sort of like blonde-looking bad guy man, and it's Star Wars. Like I get that the films had humans in them. Yeah, him. I get that the films had humans as the main cast, but that was because it was a film made in 1977. This is a CG film about Star Wars. You can pick anything you can imagine, and they just came up with generic men. But I guess there are reasons, the Empire and so on, fine.
There actually is a big reason for that, which harks back to canon. Well, I don't know if it's still going to be canon, but one of the big motivators for the Emperor in the novel series that surrounds it was that he's a xenophobe. He's an intense xenophobe, and he doesn't allow any non-humans to take any role within the Empire, and the Empire is exclusively made of people. Now, of course, that's been completely out the window now, but these kind of things, I think, and I mean, it would be really good to have an American script writer in the discussion, because that strikes me as very American. There was something else that was on the other day where people were complaining about, I was watching, their YouTube channel where they do, everything wrong with such and such in under 14 minutes, and they were doing Godzilla. And it was like this whole time, it was like we were far more worried about these horrendously two-dimensional human cliches running alongside this sort of monster fight that was happening in the background, like everyone had forgotten it was there. And I felt that that's what was happening to our villains here, and like you said, and with our main characters as well. It's like boy meets girl, stately older man, his, wisecracking pilot. It was kind of like they were also two-dimensional, but they were so human. There, like as you were saying, like you've got all these design ideas that would have been abandoned, and you've got all this technology to realize, why couldn't the pilot of the ship been a giant squid? I mean, they would have a whole world of different issues that they would have to deal with.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things.
The dynamics would have been amazing, and all of this kind of thing, and yet it's going to be Star Trek. It's going to be people painted green, going about their daily life with a bit of special effects every episode to remind you that they're in space. I'm a little concerned about it being too human.
Yeah.
Did the show remind anyone else of Firefly?
No.
It reminded me of something trying to remind me of Firefly, but it's not managing.
Right.
No, not even close.
That's going to be that's going to be the format, isn't it? It's going to be these ramshackle, almost pirates. Which, by the way, if you're going to make a character that's in competition with Han Solo, put some effort into it. Are out there in the galaxy in their ship, and they're probably gonna take on jobs, and some of them are gonna be dodgy, and some of them are gonna be of questionable merit, but that's it's a similar show format to Firefly, but the thing that was good about Firefly was how interesting the characters were and how dynamic it all was, and it's good. Now this presumably will get to that point, but I guess my worry about it is that like any concept for a TV series left to run long enough, the writers will settle into it. If it's an animated series, the animation will get better, assuming the budget doesn't tail off. It's not too much to ask to have a first episode that's flipping amazing. You know, like so many things do, and things that are on now. I've mentioned it before, but like the first episode of the present Ninja Turtles series was really engaging and funny and surprising, even though it was literally a story that I've seen done 4 different ways before. They pulled it off, and Shredder built up to gradually, like in the previous Turtle series. So something as simple as that, something as basic as like, oh, Ninja Turtles again, can do these things, and their animation's much more interesting as well, by the way, and their designs. So, come on, Star Wars! And I guess I'm just clamoring for the day when I can really, really engage with Star Wars. I guess we'll do our early Star Wars memories in a bit. But the overarching, the story arc of my memories of Star Wars is never quite getting there, except with the first film or first films. Nothing else. And that's fine, you know. Of course, like you know, the correct stance as a Star Wars fan will tell you is to like the original trilogy and nothing else. That's not unusual. But even when I was getting into that, it took me a long time, and I just want to be gripped. I want to feel what all those people a bit older than me felt with Star Wars, and it keeps the opportunity keeps coming up. Now it's out on DVD. Now it's out on Blu-ray, and every time they screw it up. And they screwed it up this time.
Right. Can I just go back to what Maddie was saying? Is like we've joined a ship with fully realized characters, not sort of getting to know them through the episode. That's a very Star Wars George Lucas thing, in that his attitude is plonk the viewer straight in the middle of the story, then carry them off. So we have the imagination that the story's been going on for quite a while before we hopped on board. One of the opening lines, if not the opening line, in Star Wars Episode 4 is C-3PO. There'll be no escape for the princess this time. That has everything in that one sentence. There'll be no escape for the princess. So we know there's a princess. We know she's in trouble. And there'll be no escape for the princess this time. So we know she's been in trouble before.
But the way that they used that was by dropping you into conflict and having the characters be changed by that conflict. This time they were dropped into an established status quo, and they had a little bit of conflict, but it didn't change anything, did it?
And I think another major factor is that every conflict that they encountered in Rebels, they were in control. They had the upper hand. One of the endearing factors of the opening of A New Hope, and in fact for that entire movie, is that they are just literally scrambling to keep ahead of the story. The story is actually moving faster than their characters, and the entire time they are never in control until the final moment. That they are constantly being outpaced by the threats around them, and doing that whole swashbuckler, just barely swinging across the chasm, that kind of thing. Whereas in Rebels, every single conflict that they were faced with, they were the ones calling the shots. They were in control. They knew more than the aggressors. They were planning the battlefields. They were bringing the fight to them. It was, as much as they are meant to be a resistance force, they were in control all through the episode. Even when they left him behind, it was not because there was no opportunity to rescue the child before he was stuck on the ship. It was a choice, indicating control. He chose to jump on his own ship, the funny Wookiee dude, and fly away. He wasn't forced. His hand wasn't forced. It wasn't like they were exploding and he had to go running down the tunnel, or the pilot had already taken off and he was only just able to save himself by a mere inch. He made a choice. And I think what led to the episode feeling very unfulfilling was the fact that I wasn't watching a bunch of rebels. I was watching a bunch of highly skilled, highly trained people with a plan who are totally comfortable with themselves, their skills, and their situation in the universe, taking on a bunch of bumbling children's toys. Really. I mean, that's what it was. It took all of the danger and the immediacy out of every situation they were put in. And that really flatlined me the whole way through. And it led to some interesting reactions to... Pink Boba Fett, no thanks, didn't like her straight away. Funny Wookiee man, I just thought he was a total a-hole, to be perfectly honest. There was no endearing qualities, but there wasn't that rugged, misguided, misunderstood kind of a-hole. He was just an a-hole. He was totally happy with being an a-hole, and in fact, I'm pretty sure he spent 3 or 4 wasted lines arguing his case of being an asshole and leaving the kid behind. There was no remorse. It was almost like, what? You know, and that, I think, really frustrated me.
You know, it's like the difference between... Ian, what you were saying about dropping people into the action. I'm not going to be very good at explaining this, but I know who is. The Red Letter Media, you know, it's an old, in itself a cliche now, but the Red Letter Media review of Phantom Menace explains this. And what's his name? I think it's Belated Media's What If Episode 1 Were Good video. They both go into the difference between an engaging in medias res opening and in the original Star Wars, and a non-engaging one in Phantom Menace. And I think that's what we've got here. Like in episode 4, you have, as you say, ship already under attack. Whoa, what are those ships that are attacking them? Who are these robots? Who are these people? And you gather what's going on as it goes on. And then in episode 1, though, what you have is these 2 diplomats landing and being completely in control of everything. Someone tries to gas them, so they put on gas masks. Someone tries to attack them, so they use magic and light swords to destroy them, and everything's fine. And that's what happened here. You know, everything was fine all the way through. You had this crew of people who know each other, who they don't have any personalities yet, and I'm sure they'll. I think that's part of the frustration, is that the writers now have to grow personalities onto them, like a culture of mold. They have to, they have these empty things, but which nevertheless present themselves as established. So now, on top of whatever they have already, they have to put more. They have to put personality, and what they have already is just. Me and Abby have this thing that we always refer to when we're talking about very simply written cartoons, which is that. And I didn't see this in this, but the sentiment is similar, which is that you always have the character whose character trait is he likes eating food. And there are so many cartoons where there's the character who likes eating food, and all the humor of that character is based on that. So they'll be in a scene, if there hasn't been a joke for a while, someone will go, food, and that character will be like, food, and they'll eat the food. And it's just one of the laziest things. And this leads to like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a really well-made cartoon, and that started out with Sokka being the food character, and then very quickly they figured out, well, no, there's so much more to him that we don't need that anymore, and they did that by, I guess, it just happened organically, and that might happen here. You might have the fact that, you know, the characters that we have may organically grow into more, and I hope that they do. But what they've started with doesn't even seem to be as good as likes food. You've got the guy who's a Jedi. That's pretty much his only character trait. You've got it's essentially what species they are is their character traits. You've got the one that's a woman. You've got the one that's a green woman. You've got the one that's a monster. And like, now he could be interesting because that stuff about it was just so much simpler to leave behind. That was a really important missed moment, I think. That moment where, the kid ends up getting shut outside the ship and they take off. Me and Abby got excited at that moment because we thought what the series was doing was going, this is a band of mercenaries or whatever it is they are, who will do what is important to do to get the job they're currently on done. And in this particular case, sad though they might be about it, that involved leaving this kid behind. And then, so I was really disappointed when they didn't know it had happened. And there was only one of them who did, and they all went, what? You left him behind, and then and you can just imagine the scriptwriters sitting around and going like, what lines can we put in here? And I think I think they came up with saying the full name of the character in a scolding way. I think that's what she said. But suddenly it revealed that all the other characters are just bland and generic. They hadn't made a stand. They hadn't made a tough decision or a ruthless decision. They just didn't realize. And when they found out, they went, oh, and they went and sorted it out. And it would have been so much more interesting if they had deliberately left him behind and if he had fought his way back to that ship after going through some kind of personal thing where he realized that he had nothing down there and wanted to go back up to the ship or anything.
What I'm getting from this is that, and now that I think about it, I sort of agree with it. It probably started with X amount of potential, but then some Disney bigwig came along with a hose and just turn on the hose full speed, watered it down as much as they possibly could, and just dumbed it down.
It feels that way.
Yeah.
These days, I do try and avoid assuming that Disney executives are necessarily bad things, purely because the time when there was this layer of creative executives at Disney, which John Lasseter purged when he sort of ended up in charge, because of that. And so, it's not so much a thing anymore that the executives are the bad guys when it comes to storytelling. But yeah, I think in this case, even whether it's them or who it was, someone has had roundtable discussions about how to make this more boring, because you don't accidentally write a pilot for Star Wars. There is no person working anywhere within the creative industry that doesn't want to work on Star Wars. There are a few people who haven't already come up with what they would do if they got to work on Star Wars. And this is like a throwaway expanded universe issue of a comic or something. It was nothing. And so hopefully you're right, and hopefully the fact that it succeeded to get a new season will drive them on to make it good sooner rather than later. It certainly has the ability to do that. If you could take these characters and start messing with them and start making them more interesting and more proactive and more ruthless or whatever you happen to want to do. But imagine if... So take it back to A New Hope. They meet Han Solo, and we've had more than a decade now of argument about how important it was that he shot that guy first before he was under attack. So we know what people found interesting about him. It was his ruthlessness. It was the fact that he was there to get a job done. He meets Luke, he meets Obi-Wan, and he doesn't say, "Okay, guys, come onto my ship." He says, "Well, it's going to cost you," and he's not their friend. It's kind of the end of the film. Is the first time he shows any kind of friendship and comes to rescue them. And that's after a lot of building up and a lot of adventures together. Up till then, he's just lumped with them. He's just their pilot that they've hired, and he's annoyed about what they're going on about. He's sat there grumping in the corner every time they talk about the flipping Force. Imagine if straight away, like within, I don't know, the first hour of the film, he had turned round and gone like, "Oh no, I can't leave them behind. how much damage that would have done to his character and how interested we are. And that's what they did to the entire crew, bar one, of this ship, of this series. They all shot second now. All of them.
If they shoot at all.
Greedo has shot at every single one of this cast.
I don't want to bash on too much, and I think we're kind of out of things to say to express their disappointment. But it would continue your misery, but it is worth watching the pre-build-up YouTube videos where the guy who was in charge of the Clone Wars and is again responsible for this series, the way he introduces the characters. They do little character videos where they bring up the stat card and the glamour shot like it's a blooming NFL game. And the way he talks about character creation, it's like he's reading from script writing 101 for dummies, but still doesn't understand it himself. The way he presents, it's terrible. It is really, and if he is the driving creative force of this show, then those interviews give a lot of weight to everything that we've been saying. It's worth watching only to feel justified that we're not just being horrible, but that the people behind it are as bland and boring and, quite frankly, as useless as the characters that they put on screen.
But you said he was the driving force behind Clone Wars, and that was good, right?
Well, he was the producer of Clone Wars, and I think it might have been more of a case of when George was there and they had a different team of writers, he might have been a little bit more of an administrator, I guess. Whereas in this case, he is the man. This is his brain blurted onto the screens, courtesy of the Disney canon. And
It was actually in the last few seasons of the Clone Wars, because it was early on where George Lucas wasn't involved. Then George Lucas okay, we've got this girl, Ahsoka Tano, she's not in Episode 3, so how do we lead the story in such a way that it makes sense for her not to be in Episode 3? And he took charge of, I think, the last 2 or 3 seasons. So everything that happened in the last 2 or 3 seasons happened under the say-so or not say-so of George Lucas.
Yeah.
Which brings up that whole continuity issue where he was asking them to go back to previous story arcs and insert different, motives and themes and characters that we'd already dealt with and done with. And, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I just licked a whole bunch of envelopes and didn't post anything.
Now that the Clone Wars is out, I'm curious because it didn't air in chronological order. There's bound to be a list on the internet somewhere. If you want to watch the Clone Wars in chronological order, here's the list. And now that there's going to be no more Clone Wars, I would like to find that list and then watch the episodes in said order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we do our
Yes.
Star Wars memories then? Because we never got around to it, did we?
That is correct. I'll go first. And I've said this before in a previous episode. It was when I was 4 or 5. I was being babysat by a friend who's the house is just down there, but they're long gone. We didn't have anything to do, and the mum said, "Oh, well, let's go down to this house, which is actually just down the end of my street." And we got some what were inevitably pirated VHS tapes. And one of them, there were 3 suitable for kids ones, one of which was Star Wars. And we decided to put that on first, and that opening scene with Darth Vader doing the chokehold on that guy has just stuck with me forever. I definitely sat down and watched the whole 2-hour film at that point, but the scenes that stuck with me were mostly anything concerning or to do with the droids. And then Empire Strikes Back. It was in the video store. I saw the Darth Vader picture. I'm like, oh, is that the second one? Then Return of the Jedi. Oh, anyway, I've said this story before. Then Return of the Jedi was at the drive-in. I slept through it. Had to wait for it to come out on VHS and saw it that one. Then 1, 2, and 3. Here's the problem with 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 assume you have seen 4, 5, and 6. And that's my memory. So someone else go. Dave, go.
Well, I was born when did Return of the Jedi come out?
1980 something.
80 something. Well, anyway, I think it was out when I was born, and so Star Wars began to me in the form of the sort of extra things. So I knew the
1983.
droids. So I knew the droids cartoon, and I knew the Ewoks cartoon before I knew that they were from the same thing, and so they were just things on TV. So essentially, to me, Star Wars was like a collection of interesting things. It was like an Avengers film. It was like a load of interesting things in one film. So Star Wars to me was like C-3POs with an arm missing at car boot sales, and things like that, just little peripheral bits and bobs. And I started to get the sense that they were all from the same thing, and I'd heard of Star Wars, but in that way that people who aren't nerds think of them, where you don't know which one's Star Trek and which one's Star Wars, that stuff. And quite honestly, this continued until I was must have been about 12 or 13, quite old. Whenever it was that they brought them out on VHS for the final time,
Again.
which actually panned out to be true. We didn't think at the time, we're like, yeah, right. And then actually it was literally true that it was the last time it came out unaltered. And I got those, and not knowing the difference in those days and not knowing what was good for me, I got the 4x3 pan and scan versions. So it was Christmas of whatever year that was. Look at this piece of sunlight that's going up and down my face. It was Christmas of whatever year that was, and I was given all 3 videos. And that moment was the moment when I first found out that there were 3 Star Wars films and not about 10. I thought it was the same as Star Trek. I just thought it was this ongoing, endless series that's just existed forever, and you dip in and out of it, and maybe the 6th one will be on at Christmas, and you'll just watch it, and No, to find out that it was these 3 films and you can sit down and watch them in order came as a genuine surprise to me. And also, it came with, I don't think from the shop, I think this was just my parents did this, but it came with a complete box set of Micro Machines based on Star Wars. So I had this box of all these little Star Wars ships, plus tiny little figurines of the characters. And so what I was able to do is I was able to watch these films and play Spot the Ship. I could look through the box and be like, oh, there's that one. Oh, okay, that's a TIE fighter. So that was it. That was when I kind of found out what Star Wars was, and I watched it and I was fascinated by it. It was really intriguing. I remember it didn't catch me the same way that it caught other kids. I wasn't like, wow, this is the most exciting thing I've ever seen. But it was intriguing. And so when it came out again at the cinema, do you remember the advert, the trailer that they had for the special edition? It sold it really well. There you are at the cinema watching Independence Day, whatever it was you were watching, and in the middle of the giant cinema screen was a little TV set with clips from Star Wars, and it's like, and it would go like, remember Star Wars? No, you don't, because this is what it's meant to be like. And then like the X-wings fly out of the little TV screen, and suddenly it's like big, huge images, and completely sold. So me and my friend Ashley, who was like the only one who wanted to go and see this for some reason. We went and we saw them all back to back the same day, and we calculated it so that we could go from one. The cinema we went to was showing the different films in different, screens. So we were able to go to one, move to the next screen, watch the next one, move to the next one, watch the next one, stopping only to collect the free cans of Dr. Pepper on the way that you were supposed to only get one of each, but the person giving them out would change with shifts, so we were able to get new ones to stock up for the film. And God, what a day that was! I mean, that was I didn't realize that there was anything wrong with the special edition that day. I completely fell for the hype. We were watching an enhanced version of a film. It was very exciting. And then, yeah, you know, as time went by, I started to realize that I wasn't necessarily in favor of these changes, particularly given that the old version wasn't available. And then the DVDs came out, and I have to admit, I was largely happy with them. I was very interested in all of the different changes. I remember reading blogs and like catching up on what people would make. Not blogs, whatever it was, the equivalent those days. People would have a website that would show you exactly frame by frame what the differences were between the original and the new one. And so I, for a moment there, was a Star Wars fan when the DVDs came out. That was when geek culture was taking off, and we were like, yeah, Star Wars is the most important thing in the world. And I remember my dad coming into the room and me talking about how I'm going to get these Star Wars DVDs. And I remember him saying, you've never been that into Star Wars. Why are you going on about this? And I'm like, because it's Star Wars, Dad. He's like, so you're going to spend 40, 50 quid, whatever it was, to watch these films that you only partly care about because you've been told that it's an important name. Yeah, I guess so. and he was right. So I've never got around to getting the Blu-rays, but now we have the despecialized edition. So you know, as close as is possible, we can watch the real film. So I intend to do that soon and relive those memories, and I'll report back when I do.
The Blu-ray versions, which has the Ewoks blinking and the added Darth Vader no, which completely ruins the moment of that scene. Because by him not saying no, you can still see he's torn between his loyalty to the Emperor and his loyalty to his son. And he sides with family over the Force.
It's amazing how bad some of the changes they made were. Given that some of the changes they made were the sort of changes you should be making, like that one bit where the matte painting of the end of the corridor wasn't in the correct perspective, so they fixed that. Great, that's exactly the sort of thing you should fix. You know, I'm even down with things like the you know, there's that shot early on in the first one where R2-D2 is trundling along the little valley between the cliffs, and they go with a sort of a shot of the weird skyline and then pan down so it doesn't just look like Earth cliffs. That's fine. I'm happy with all that sort of thing if you want to do that. But then, yeah, they were making decisions that were, especially when the Blu-ray was being fiddled with, in an era when you know how hostile people are towards bad changes to Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have known how bad a decision that no was.
Yeah. I don't know why, because it's just a copy and paste of the no from Episode 3.
Is it?
But yes, it is.
Terrible.
Yeah, from when he's Darth Vader and, you know, you snap your fingers and boom, he's Darth Vader and the Emperor's like, oh, you killed Padme, and it's like, no! And that was just a poorly timed no as well, and that area of the movie in Episode 3 needed to me a more fully realized scene, because as Dave pointed out a few episodes ago, you know, I'm Anakin, boom, I'm Darth Vader. Oh, I've recently acquired the audiobook of Episode 3, which has music in it in parts. It's
yeah.
I like
TIE
that.
fighter sound effects and things.
Yeah, 13 hours, I think.
Is it the unabridged?
It most certainly is. The abridged version's only 6 hours.
Yeah, because, gosh, really? They managed to cut that much?
Yeah.
They probably just cut it down to what's actually in the film.
Probably. And with a bit more besides.
I heard a bit of that. I found the narrator to be a bit dry, but
touch. Yeah. It's not too bad though. Anyway, Maddie, who is currently eating, your earliest memories.
Well, I've talked about it before, that my earliest memories of Star Wars are hard to pinpoint, because when I was young I spent a large amount of time with my uncle, who was 13 years older than me. And so he was in the prime position. He was the target demographic for the merchandising, from specifically the second and the third. I actually know, probably more like the second. No, actually, yeah, no, because he would have been 13 when the third one came out. Um, and because of that, for me, I kind of feel that it's always been not just in my life, but actually part of my life. And I've gone to the deepest, darkest depths of nerd addiction with Star Wars. Um, that, I'm not ashamed of it, but, it was that kind of hazy, addicted fog where I don't really remember what I was doing for all those years, surrounding myself with it. But two things stand out. One is my own personal gripe about the changes made in '97 when they re-released them in cinemas, and then the second one's just a nice bit of a funny story. My biggest gripe, and because I'm also incredibly emotionally attached to that score, not just because of its association with Star Wars, but because of the effect it had on me as a musician, and still to this day has a huge effect on how I perceive music. The change that I cannot ever, ever, ever forgive any person involved in the decision was changing the final triumphant song at the end of Return of the Jedi from what growing up was one of the standout pieces of composition that I ever heard across any spectrum of music, and I've indulged in everything from rockabilly to extreme avant-garde music, and not just indulged, I'm talking I've composed and performed all spectrums, and this particular chart of John Williams was, I think, one of his most spectacular works. And then 1997 comes along and we get what sounds like the D-grade student from the backwater Minnesota University of Composition who scrambled to write at 1 a.m. the morning it was due to be handed in. I would have forgiven them if they'd have come up with something that was either a reverse overture of all of the thematic events, that have peppered the storyline to date, or some kind of glorious reimagining of how a score functions with music, because they inserted all of those scenes, the fall of Coruscant, mimicking the fall of the Stalin statue, where they pulled down Palpatine, all of these brilliant worlds that they, and then they could have really, like we've been saying with Rebels, they had carte blanche to go, here's a new idea, we're at the end of this grand experiment, and we're going to leave you with this thing where any of you educated in the field are going to walk out going, my world has changed. Yes, TIE fighters and aspect ratios and who shot first, but man, that score at the end was game-changing. No, it was shit. It was, that word is totally justified. It was a horrible piece of music that just, it was badly mixed, it was badly recorded, it was just, and there was nothing positive to find about it. And to this day, in my punctured memories of Star Wars events, my interactions with Star Wars, that one stands out as the strongest. It wasn't my first. It certainly wasn't my most treasured, obviously, but it's definitely the strongest. That when that scene came, and I was so giddy with excitement, thinking, what are they going to do here? It's the penultimate set of scenes, really, and they shat on it. And I really hate to be so vulgar, but it was a really big mistake. So, yeah, it's not my earliest, but it's definitely the biggest memory that I have of early Star Wars as a child is my absolute adoration for that particular piece of music at the end of Return of the Jedi. My funny story involves my reaction at the time of Phantom Menace's screening. I went with my stepfather, and I was living in a place called Toowoomba. It's a fairly large town, and we had a new cinema complex built. I think at that stage it was literally only months old. And everybody was excited. Everybody was over the moon. This is kind of early dial-up internet days. So, I think we spent a week waiting for a picture to load of, some of the key, technology and this kind of thing. And it was we didn't really know who the actors were. We weren't able to look up the biographies. Went to the cinema, giddy, excited, first night. I was ill. And I was not a child of the movies or these big spectacular outings. So within 3 minutes of that opening scene, which, wasn't the most spectacular of opening space scenes, all that kind of thing, I got really sick and I had to run from the theatre. This was a brand new complex that I had no idea of the layout. I couldn't find the bathroom. I couldn't find anyone to help me find the bathroom because it was a midnight screening. And I found solace for my digestion problems in a garbage bin. A garbage bin that proceeded to beep furiously because it was, fitted with
Anti-vomit technology?
No, like anti-tampering like if you tried to pick it up or shake it or, it'd beep. So the only person in this entire huge complex that came to my rescue was a burly, out of, unfit security guard who came bumbling up the stairs to see what the problem was with this fandangled electronic R2-D2 style, garbage bin. And then he proceeded to turn around and say, actually, the bathroom is like right behind you. It was literally right behind me. So I cleaned myself up and I entered the movie not having I missed all of the opening scenes with the droids and Obi-Wan, and I think I entered and they'd already made it to Tatooine. And were attempting to, barter with the blue man. So I completely and utterly missed the thrill of the first original Star Wars cinema experience that I would have remembered because I was of an age to, hold on to these memories. I did go and see all of them at the cinema in 1997, but that doesn't count.
What sort of age were you at that point?
I would have been around 16.
Yeah, I think I was about that, and no, when was it? 99? It was probably 18 or something. And I went to Phantom Menace. It didn't even occur to me to talk about Phantom Menace, but it was an important moment, and I went to that with a group of friends who were Star Wars fans. One of them particularly was a Star Wars fan, and he had been looking forward to it for a long time. And what was quite interesting was that when we came out of the film, we were all happy. We were all buzzing. And I was kind of like, I secretly didn't understand any of that, but I guess that's probably just because I'm not a very big Star Wars fan. So I was like, yeah, that was good. And then my friend who was like the biggest Star Wars fan was like, oh, that was amazing. Oh, what a day. That was brilliant. And then over the next few weeks, he just got quieter and quieter as he processed what he'd been through. And yeah, it was a strange experience. But it's funny how a film that was so frustrating and disappointing and not terrifically good does have this odd edge of nostalgia to it now, because it comes from this era where, everything was different. I remember as we walked out of the cinema, as we walked out of the film, they had the first that I'd ever seen demo unit of a Sega Dreamcast, and I went and played on Sonic Adventure, and so it all ties up with that, the gaming was changing, and I've always been a games player, and so that was changing, and everything was changing. So it does have nostalgia to it, and it's frustrating to have fondness for something that you can't really enjoy just sitting and watching.
Yeah, I went and saw The Phantom Menace with a friend of mine who's since become a psychologist, which surprises me, because he was the kind of guy like the lazy layabout, does nothing with his life, and now he's a psychologist. So that was very surprising to me, when he sort of went down that path. Where was I going? Oh, we looked at each other at the end, shrugged, and were like, yeah, it was a Star Wars film. neither he nor I understood the sheer and utter hatred that film received from the media. I'm like, I never expected it to be a groundbreaking new film the way the original one was, because it's not the original Star Wars film. It's a new film in an already established universe, and this new film, The Phantom Menace, followed very much all the same tropes and conventions as established by any Star Wars film. And I honestly don't understand why so many people think Episode 3 is the best of those three. I think it's the worst of the lot. By far.
I'm going to express a very unpopular opinion that I
Yep.
don't often air in public, so this is huge.
Mhm.
I am a Phantom Menace fan,
Yep.
and I think that film is beautiful.
Yeah.
It might
Including
not
Jar Jar
be-
Binks.
In a way, nothing can be captivating and beautiful without something that isn't right. If you think about this fascination of, this is really crass and vulgar, but you always stare at the strange people. You always stare at that person who's got the eyebrow the wrong way, or their nose is a bit funny on one side. And if you have a look at a lot of billboards and advertising, those models, there's something wrong with them. Their eyes are too far apart. Their nose is too far down. They've got like I don't know, there's something that makes you not want to stop looking. And Phantom Menace has a lot of those moments, but its delivery, its sheen over the top is, I think, quite beautiful. And it's something that, what I like about episodes 1, 2, and 3 is that there is nothing that is anything like them. Not story, not character. I'm just talking about if you were to just block your ears and look at them. There's nothing that looks like those movies. There's nothing with that design aesthetic. There's nothing that makes... I look at Phantom Menace, and I've watched it numerous times, and I feel comfortable. I feel very serene. And even the moments where I want to roll my eyes, I do not want to hit Jar Jar Binks. I do not want to see his head on a pike. But I'm happy to roll my eyes at him. But I think it's a beautiful film. And there's no substance. That's fine. There's no substance to a diamond either. You can't eat it. You can't grow things from it. You can't throw it at anything and have it successfully have some kind of a reaction. But it's beautiful.
I can get
Oh,
behind
sorry.
this. I definitely can. As a somewhat slightly fractionally ironic but almost 100% genuine fan of the Super Mario Brothers movie for exactly the reasons you just described, and as a 100% non-ironic, will defend it to the death fan of the Robert Altman live-action Popeye movie for exactly the reasons you just said, I can get behind this. My problem, yeah, in terms of the aesthetic, I guess it ties in with what I was saying about that nostalgia. It's such a striking image that other stuff from that same time doesn't have that nostalgic reaction because it's not striking enough to have formed its identity. The problem is, though, of course, and as I said, it's difficult to be nostalgic for something that you can't enjoy watching. The reason I can't enjoy watching Phantom Menace is that it's really boring. Well, that's what everyone else thinks of the Popeye movie, so I can I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a... Oh, you're going to play us
Yeah.
out. I just want to say really quickly that
I'm not going to
my
play. Oh,
particular
Yeah.
movie tastes are slow and boring. And
that's
I
why you
have
like
an
Asian
entire-
dramas so much.
not necessarily Asian dramas. I like art movies. I like those slow-moving French movies or those desaturated Japanese hillside village movies where it's about the local doctor who, you know, who's struggling to handle the 3 patients that he has to deal with on a daily basis.
You'd
So I
probably enjoy A Gentle Breeze in the Village.
Sounds awesome.
Okay, sorry. Please continue.
No, I was just going to say that there's definitely there's people who like hyper-realism and who get behind the Avengers 100% because it's like, oh, I lived in that apartment and now it's been destroyed by that dude in the ultra-realistic suit and oh my god, there's aliens. And there's people like me who just like to go, oh, that's really nice. Horses for
Right.
courses.
Yeah. So what you're saying is the Phantom Menace is a train wreck, a beautiful, beautiful train wreck that's been there for so many years. Nobody fixed the rails, nobody fixed the train. It's got beautiful growth growing over the top of it. There's trees sprouting, there's bees buzzing, and birds flying around. But out of 1, 2, and 3, Episode 2 is actually my favorite.
Really?
Yes!
Holy cow! That's a surprise.
Why? Out of 1, 2, and 3,
Yeah.
Episode
Because-
4 and 6 are my favorites.
Yeah. No, because generally speaking, you'll have the people who, because Matty, you're not my only friend who defends Phantom Menace. I have another, and then some people think that the third one is the best of the prequel trilogy because I guess it's got Darth Vader in it. I've never known anyone go to bat for the second one before.
Right? No, I don't even know what it is that I like about it. If you made me write down an essay or a blog, I just enjoy that particular film the best. And the scene that's popping into my head right now is the car chase scene relatively early on in the film.
Yeah.
Whereas I found Episode 3 slow and boring, and it took too long to say too little. Whereas the amount that was trying to be said in Episode 2 was the right amount of length for the right amount of what they were saying. So does anyone have any follow-up thoughts before I guess we finish off for the evening?
I have a defense for number 2, but you go, Dave.
No, I'm changing the subject entirely, so you do your number 2 defense.
Very, very short. My defense, because I personally would pick number 2 as my favorite of 1, 2, and 3. One simple reason. You have no idea what they're going to do. Episode 1, we know what it is. Little boy from Tatooine, taken off to the grand universe, starts his training, all that political nonsense and midi-chlorians and all that wonderful stuff is irrelevant. We know the main character, what he's doing. Jump to number 3. We know what's going to happen. Little boy grows up, disillusioned by the machine, searches for an easy way out, takes it, big scary black guy, no, and we're on to Episode 4. We get to Episode 2, and you're left sitting there going, wow, what are they going to do? What's going to happen? You know?
So what? I see what you mean. It's like Episode 1 is A, and Episode 2 is... It's set up to make you think it's C, but Episode 2 is how do we get from one to the other? What events are going on in there that we don't already know about in the established Star Wars universe are going to transpire in this film?
And that's my
okay.
defense of Episode 2.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rewatch these again soon. I've never actually watched them all in complete chronological order. I'll have to just sit down and do that and plonk the Clone Wars right in between 2 and 3, just so it's as authentic as possible. Dave.
I was just going to say that I feel sorry for Hayden Christensen, who has, through no fault of his own, of course you'd take the role. Good God, if anyone offered you the role, you take it. And he's not good in the films, but then no one is, including the people who are solid, great actors. Their ability to perform is somehow reduced, either by design or whatever, in the Star Wars prequel.
Their ability to act is reduced by the fact that they're imagining what they're talking to because they're in front of a blue screen.
Yeah, maybe. And I guess probably most of them are more used to that now that there's a lot more CG in just normal films, but certainly at the time it was a new thing. And anyway, Hayden Christensen is the focal point of hate for Star Wars fans, because not even so much because of the prequel films, but because of replacing what's name at the end of Return of the Jedi in that scene there, which
yeah.
You know, whatever excuses they can give, they just shouldn't have done that. And it's not his fault, of course. He's under contract. He does what he's got to do. But imagine he was probably really excited about that. they will have sold to him exactly why they were doing it, why it would tie the whole series up. Everyone was going to love it. It was going to be exciting. Everyone hated it, and he's got that on him now. He will always know that happened, and that he is the last image of that everyone hates in the last moment that everyone hates in what was bad done to Star Wars.
I'm going to put forward another really super concise argument.
Yeah.
And it's simply this.
Yeah.
Did they win? Did Lucas and Christensen make fools of all of us? Because let's put it this way. Darth Vader, the villain that we all love. Anakin Skywalker, the hero we all hate.
Right.
I'm just going to leave it there. On with...
Brilliant.
I totally agree with Maddie about the score. The Ewoks, Jub Jub, I always call it the Jub Jub song because that's how the original one goes, and they're all banging their ethnic instruments and whatever. Totally agree with the score change. When I was in the cinema, I was like, don't change the score, don't change it, don't. It's like, as for the ending, and this is putting my thoughts into the actual Star Wars universe. They should have left the ending alone, where the apparition of Luke's father appeared, because Luke never saw his father as Hayden Christensen, so he wouldn't know what he looks like. He only saw him as that Darth Vader image. So, when he takes the helmet off, that's all he saw. So it would make sense to keep that, because that's the only image of his father that he has.
Yeah, because all of the arguments which are reasonable arguments about how, but that's the real Anakin and so on, they apply, but they apply to the audience who's been watching all the films. What you see immediately after that shot is Luke's reaction, which is a fond goodbye. And in fact, he would be like, oh, bye, and who are you?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Yoda. Oh, Master Kenobi. You?
And
you
their mate Jim.
Has anyone done a parody of that? There must be a parody video somewhere of that exact scenario.
Oh, well, possibly. My favourite one was the old one where someone photoshopped something else into it, and it got to the point where you had RoboCop and Bill and Ted all appearing as Force ghosts. There was this one Photoshop that got passed around until everybody in the world was in it. It was great.
Right. Nice. Just a little piece to... I won't finish the episode here, we'll still go, but I hope I get the notes right. Slight mistake, but never mind about the mistake.
I did a cover of that. I think it's buried somewhere in my YouTube channel, which was for an old story I was doing on the internet, one of those old Santa stories I used to do. And there was this moment where Santa had to be sad and sort of standing on the edge of a cliff, so I did a cappella version of that. So that's buried somewhere in my videos if anyone wants to see that.
I'll check. I'm looking forward to your Super Mario Brothers video. I'm assuming it'll come out after you've got the high-res 1080p.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so...
You mean my sort of justification of why I like the film?
Yeah, because you said you were working on a video that explains...
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, not in an active way, but I'm definitely going to make one, yeah. I've written a script for it and everything.
Yeah.
So yes, I don't know. In fact, I don't know why I've not done it yet. I should do. I will.
Maddie, what's Maddie sharing? Hang on, let's find out. Let's present this to everyone. Oh, Lego TIE Fighter, and they appear to be to scale.
That is, I own both of them, but the hand on the left is our mutual friend James, and that's me on the right. So I have a lot of Star Wars Lego, but I don't have it with me here where I live now. It's in the safekeeping of James.
Yeah, still at James's place. Yes, that's nice. Actually, that's Star Wars. I was very disappointed in Star Wars. because my favorite genre of Lego was space Lego. There was, the Blacktrons, the Magnetrons.
M-Tron.
Yeah, M-Tron, the Space Police. I loved the Space Police. And then along comes Star Wars. Squash! That's it. It's only Star Wars Lego from now on. You want space Lego? You get Star Wars.
Same thing, or looked like it was going to happen when Pirates of the Caribbean Lego came out.
Oh,
And
to
the
replace Pirate
Lego Pirate, the original Lego pirate ship was one of just the highlights of my life. And so I'm very glad to see the Lego movie bring that back round with an amazing new pirate ship. Thanks, movie.
Yep. All right. I guess we'll have Lego as our subject one week.
Yeah.
Have you all caught up on the new series Gotham?
Sorry, can't hear you now. You've just moved your microphone away.
Have you all caught up on the new series Gotham?
The new series, what?
Gotham.
Haven't heard of it.
Oh no, haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it's basically Smallville except it's Gotham. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you hopefully both next week.
Goodbye.
Sounds good. Thanks again, guys.
And the circle moves in, and our names come up in blue, and that's it. And it.